Well, you're not saying that phonics instruction is invalid or shouldn't be.
Phonics instruction has to be restructured. Phonics has to be very significantly changed for it to be effective.
Welcome to the Teacher RockStar podcast. I'm your host, Steve Hiles, and in today's episode, we're going to be discussing reading literacy in K-12 public schools with our special guest, Dr. Marion Blank. Dr. Marion is one of the leading experts in literacy and child development today. She's been a consultant for Sesame Street and has won major awards like the Upton Sinclair Award and a Career Development Award from NIH, National Institutes of Health, and her programs have helped thousands of educators and families worldwide. Welcome to the show, Dr. Marion. So pleased to have you.
Oh, well, thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
Okay. Well, I'll tell you what, I know this is going to be a great topic, and I'm sure our audience is going to get tons of value out of this. But before we begin with the questioning, would you like to take a moment to share your educational journey with our audience?
Oh, well, I decided when I was thinking about that to talk about an experience which was, to me, unique. I met at one point, I was very fortunate to meet Jane Goodall, and we were on a committee together. And she mentioned, and I think she's done this in her writings as well, that she got into her love of animals when she was about 2 or 3. She says she knew it was her life's journey. And the thing, I realized that I had something similar. Many people in my family were not literate. They came from Eastern Europe, had no chance for schooling. And my grandmother was one of the members who was illiterate, and I felt terrible for her. So when I was about 5 and I was just starting to read, I started to teach her to read. She was my first student. And unfortunately, she became very ill. We couldn't continue, but it was a very, very powerful experience in my life. So I've been doing this for a very long time.
All right. Well, thank you for sharing that. I have to ask you, Dr. Marion, in many classrooms, we see a model where the teacher does 80% of the talking, right? And then students only contribute about 20%. Well, how does this imbalance, affect reading literacy? And what would happen if the scenario was flipped?
That's a fascinating question because there's a lot of yeses to it and a lot of no's to it. It's complicated. The reason for it is that people try to give children more of a role, but because of the group structure, no child would ever really get any significant role. So that there's no evidence that kids will listen to other kids more effectively than they listen to the teacher. In fact, I had a girl with attention deficit disorder who said to me, I hate it when the other students talk. She says, I can't tell if they're right or wrong. She says, at least when the teacher talks, I know. But there is something I think that is totally feasible, totally important, and we ought to be doing, which is not that the teacher should talk less, she should talk differently. I use she because she is so commonly the teacher. One of the things that teachers do, and there are hundreds of articles on, is rapid fire questioning, one after the other. And one of the reasons teachers do it is they've been given a very difficult situation, which is to hold the attention of 20 or 30 kids. And they feel that the rapid fire will not lose the group. But in fact, if the teacher would learn, be taught how and become familiar with commenting, relevant comments that would precede each question, it would transform the classroom. So let's say it's July 4th, or they're talking about July 4th. Teacher, instead of saying, well, what holiday is coming up now? And the teacher would give a very brief but relevant set of ideas that fit the age of the students. So she'd say, well, we're coming up to a big holiday, and it's July 4th. You know it. Now, it actually started, and she gives a couple of facts about it, and then she can proceed to ask her question. It is amazing how this transforms the classroom exchange. It's slower, It's more thoughtful, and the kids are really interested because they're getting a solid piece of information instead of testing questions. And I've written a major paper on this a number of years ago. And if anyone writes me after, I'll be happy to send them a copy.
Okay. Okay, great. This leads me to something that I find interesting here. Like when a student gives a wrong answer during a reading lesson, let's say, what's the most effective way for a teacher to respond, to preserve confidence while still guiding the student toward comprehension, and not making the kid feel bad? You know what I mean? Are you a teacher who finds yourself drowning in the challenges of classroom management? Do student behaviors leave you feeling overwhelmed and drained at the end of each day? Picture this: a classroom where your students are not just present, but fully engaged, focused, and eager to learn. Say goodbye to classroom management stress and hello to success. The Teacher RockStar Academy course is meticulously designed to equip you with the tools and strategies needed to skyrocket your effectiveness as a teacher. Curious to know if the Teacher RockStar Academy course is the missing piece in your teaching journey? If you're ready to reclaim control of your classroom and witness the incredible impact on your students, then use the link in the podcast description to learn more about this program.
Absolutely. The thing is, it's very hard for the teacher to maintain because of the group situation, maintain attention on the child who needs help, because she loses the other kids at that point.
Mm-hmm.
And years ago, and I could send that as well, I wrote a chapter. It's amazingly the only chapter still in the literature on how to handle the wrong response. But what you really want to do is set up techniques that prevent wrong responses, and when you get them, allow you to get out of it pretty quickly, depending on how large the group is. So I would, again, send that paper out to anyone who wants it. And if worse comes to worse, it's much better if the teacher provides the answer and then goes on with another student. At least they're over the hurdle. The kids know that there's no judgment about it. Let's make it a simple thing. He's asked to give the sound of the letter P, and he gives the sound of the letter B. So the teacher could say simply like, "You're close." It's always good to support something that the child has done. You're close, but in fact, it's a cook who say that, and so but teachers are taught to shy away from that. I think if they use it effectively with a supportive tone, it's very helpful to the kids, because what they're terrified of is a wrong response where they're going to be judged as foolish, stupid, inadequate. And that's vital to avoid.
Absolutely. And that's something obviously we don't want to have happen. This leads me to the next thing I want to talk to you about. And that's, we often hear that early reading strategies can predict long-term academic challenges. Like what could you tell me, Dr. Marion, what are schools today getting right, and where are they falling short, when it comes to identifying and addressing reading difficulties early on?
Well, unfortunately, schools are much more supportive of the students than they used to be. There's much less condemnation, which is excellent. But the rate of reading failure in the United States is frightening, and it hasn't improved in decades. So my work on that is to change the method of reading instruction. You can't use the current methods that are there. They're just I'll give you an example why the techniques don't mesh with the children. It's not discussed that much, but one of the most common deficits in kids who have trouble learning to read is what's called a naming problem. So it's what older people have, like me. I don't know what you look, but you say, "Oh, I know that guy. He lives on Smith Street." And you finally come up with a name. Well, children who have reading problems have that in very, very, very strong trait in that. Kids who have naming problems have tremendous trouble using phonics, because phonics takes, let's say, a simple word like cat and gives it three names: k, a, t. Every sound is a name. So the system is just not set up for the children. Fortunately, if we were open to it, there are alternative
Uh-huh.
techniques, and that's what we should be using.
Okay. Well, you're not saying that phonics instruction is invalid or shouldn't be.
Phonics instruction has to be restructured. The idea of phonics is good. The idea, I'll give you, it's that we have, there's a very famous psychologist who does a lot of work in, and he's known as a very good theorist. And he says our phonics techniques are not representative of the phonics knowledge the kids need. So there's a mismatch. And it's a very complex area. We really don't have time to discuss it too much today, but phonics has to be very significantly changed for it to be effective. And the interesting thing is that Benjamin Franklin wrote about, I mean, everybody's written about this in the past, but Benjamin Franklin wrote about it. He was a printer, and he talked about the problems of a phonics approach. If they could do it right, it would be fine, but it's very hard to do it right with the current methods.
I see. Well, with the rise of technology, let me ask you this, and screen time, you know how our kids are all on the screen quite a bit. How have students' reading habits changed, and what can educators do to reignite the love for reading in today's schools?
It's very rough. It's the reports that are coming out. I mean, for example, the average high school senior reads in any day no more than 4 minutes. People are not reading. And what I have found, if you teach reading so that the child feels successful from very early on, they love reading. But most of the children find a very high percentage find reading to be a chore. So we have to totally restructure reading. I've done it. I have programs out that do that. But they're very different from the mainstream teaching, because the mainstream has a very firm grip on what's going on.
Do you think, let me ask you this. Do you think that having independent reading time in the classroom, X amount of hours per day, every day, is a good idea? I mean, books of the students choosing that they love, whether it's a comic book or whether it's something they can read and comprehend and respond to.
Well, the general approach is excellent. The thing is that the kids need help. And so, for example, if the materials was structured, I'll give you just one example. If the materials was structured so that the child had audio material available to him, so any word that he doesn't know, he could easily access, that would transform the process. But we know that poor readers, and unfortunately, majority of children in our country fit that label, poor readers will not stop and try and look it up. And so we've got to make techniques. So independent reading is great. We've got to give them techniques that allow it to be successful.
Right. Like, for example, I'm sorry, but for example, could it be books on tape?
Oh, definitely. And you could integrate them in very clever ways between the two. We need to give more time and attention to varying the ways we're doing the teaching. And one of the things I found, and I worked a lot in very poor neighborhoods in New York City for many years, and if you get the children successful right from the outset, they love reading. There is nothing they love more, and it's such a pleasure to see. So we must prevent the failure that the kids are experiencing.
Absolutely. Well, Dr. Marion, let me ask you this now. Reading literacy, as we know, is more than just decoding words, right? It's about understanding, analyzing, and even empathizing. How can teachers go beyond the phonics that we just mentioned a minute ago and fluency to foster deeper comprehension skills across all, grade levels?
Well, years ago, a lot of this has been stopped. One of the favorite activities in our schools when I was a kid was that New York City, where I was raised, had librarians, really good quality librarians coming in telling us stories about once or twice a month. If children are exposed to really interesting material, and if teachers are trained how to deal with the interesting material, for example, I use film clips a lot with children, because if they're reading a complex thing, let's say about the Constitutional Convention, whatever it was, 17, whatever, it's extraordinarily hard. If there's a good film clip that shows it smooths the path tremendously. So there should be a much better integration of visual material and the auditory material. And we can do it. We have all the materials we need. We're not doing it enough. Some teachers do, but most teachers haven't been trained in how to do it.
This leads me to an off question, I guess. Do you think our colleges are training in teacher preparation programs how to teach reading effectively? I mean, what's your sense of that?
Well, I haven't been visiting many colleges of that sort, but the reports that I have I'll pull an example from something far out. Years ago, Finland faced a huge problem in their reading and in their school achievement. And what they did was revamp the system. So first of all, there were no differences in any schools. If a school was in a poor district, it had the same quality teachers, the same quality materials, the same quality atmosphere. Mm-hmm. And the teachers were extremely well trained. And they just revamped everything, and they have phenomenal success.
Absolutely.
So it is a revamping of the system that we need. We can't have kids. I've met so many teachers who use their own funds to get supplies because they're working in terrible situations. So we know the answer. We're not doing it because it doesn't fit the system that we've set up.
Yeah, it's unfortunate, isn't it?
Very, very.
Dr. Marion, the science of reading has gained a lot of attention in recent years, reshaping how educators approach reading instruction. What's your take on the science of reading movement, and do you see it as a much needed course correction?
Perhaps I've misinterpreted, but I don't think so. The science of reading is essentially phonics instruction. And phonics instruction is just incomplete. I'll give you an example, and it's part of the work I've done for many years. English has two major classes of words: non-content words, the little words like if and but and so and the, and content words, which are nouns, verbs, and adjectives. Boy and car and truck and all that kind of thing. And phonics, or the science of reading, it's in that sense they're the same, does not teach those non-content words. They call them sight words and give minimal teaching to them. One of the facts of English life, which is amazing to everyone, is that roughly 60 to 65% of everything we say, everything we read, are non-content words. Even if you take the cat in the hat, cat in the hat, 3 of the 5 words are non-content words. Now, you can teach the non-content words. I do a lot of that, but you cannot teach it by just holding up sight word cards and saying, remember this. It doesn't work. They must be taught the grammatical function, the meaning function of those words. And that has to go into the teaching. That's what I've tried to do in my programs. So the change that has come about has not solved the problem. And because phonics still, or science of reading, has a lot of gaps, and they haven't closed them, but they have tremendous political power because, for example, in several schools that wanted to use programs I developed couldn't because they didn't have a strong enough phonics component in the way phonics is thought of. They have a phonics component. For example, the non-content words have to go to a different area of the brain from the content words, and which is well known in neurology, but no one does it in teaching of reading. And when you really integrate full components of language, the reading instruction is really much better. We just haven't done it. It's amazing to talk about the fact that this is so lacking.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, let me ask you this, Dr. Marion. What is your biggest takeaway that you would like to share with our audience today? I know there's probably many things, but if you had to just pick one major thing, what would you tell our teachers out there?
We have the ability to achieve literacy in everyone, even when I do it regularly with even non-speaking autistic children. The possibilities are immense. The society has to be open to change. Currently, the science of reading has monopoly power in the field. And no school will get federal funding if they don't use it. So, and it is I know a lot of people will disagree with me on that, and I'd be happy to talk with them or debate with them about it. But it can't handle the problem. And we've got to know at this stage, we should be entertaining, encouraging people to come in with new approaches to reading. We had only officially whole language and phonics, and we need much more. And there are very interesting developments in neurolinguistics and so on, which if we could encourage young investigators to get in there and work on it, we would definitely have solutions. I'll give you one last fact. And I didn't know this when I started out, but it takes much longer for a child to recognize and label a non-content word like the than a content word like car. And the reason it takes much longer, this is for beginning readers, the reason is it goes to different areas of the brain. By the end of first grade, the kids who are going to be good readers have closed the gap between the content and the non-content words. They read them equally well. Poor readers never close the gap. Now, if you just take that fact, if 60% of the text is non-content, even if you've taught every phonics rule you could imagine, you've left the kids unprepared for 60% of the text because we know they have language problems, and one of the language problems is difficulty in processing the non-content domain. So we need, and a lot of my work has been devoted toward helping them master the non-content. You can, and once you do it, it's amazing.
Okay. Well, Dr. Marion, how can folks connect with you?
They're happy to respond to their emails. It's drmarionblank@gmail.com. The doctor is just Dr.
Okay.
drmarionblank@gmail.com.
All right. Outstanding. And, Dr. Marion, I also have that in the YouTube description as well.
Oh, terrific.
Okay. So they'll know where to go for that. And I want to thank you so much for taking time today out of your busy schedule to come and talk to us. I know our teachers out there, I'm sure, got immense value of what you had addressed today. And again, I just thank you very, very much for coming on the show.
Oh, it's been a pleasure. Thank you.
All right. Well, my friends, we have come to the end of today's episode, and I want to thank you for listening to the Teacher RockStar podcast. I'm your host, Steve Hiles, and we will see you same time, same place next week. And remember, my friend, you got this.
You've been listening to the Teacher RockStar podcast with your host, Steve Hiles. We hope you've enjoyed this podcast as much as we have. Make sure to hit that subscribe button and join our ever-growing community of Teacher RockStars. Until then, thanks for listening.